Commercial agriculture relies on vast amounts of chemicals to keep harvests coming in. But what do these mean for our health and the environment? Every day we are exposed to small amounts of pesticide residues. We're told these are safe as long as they fall under the minimum recommended levels. But we are not told about the long-term effect of repeated exposure to a toxic cocktail of agricultural chemicals.
The problem with the combination of all the pesticides being eaten at one meal is we have no idea what it can do.
Mary Ann Scherer is a nutritionist and author of the book The Natural Way.
You know, we sort of fear a car accident because it kills you instantly, whereas something like this could take years to produce cancer in your body.
For decades, pesticides like DDT and lindane were used before it was discovered how toxic they are. They belong to a group of chemicals called persistent organic pollutants, or POPs. They're subject to a worldwide ban because they accumulate in animals, humans and the environment and can take hundreds of years to break down. They've been linked to cancer and hormone disruption, also known as endocrine disruption.
It's unbelievably frightening. If you're looking at the two systems that keep us alive, and your endocrine system controls your heart function, your liver function, your lung function, your skin function, everything that goes on in the body. And here we're taking tiny amounts every day from our fresh fruits and vegetables, from animal flesh that we may be eating, such as lamb, and it's accumulating in our bodies. And we don't even know that this is happening.
Gerard van Doren is a poison specialist.
POPs, that's an acronym for persistent organic pollutants. And those are virtually exclusively organochlorine compounds, like the old Duran, DDT, Endron, Aldon, heptachlor, toxaphene, all those compounds which are toxic to all forms of life in the state environment for many, many years. I think we've got a great concern in the Karoo where we used a compound called lindane or gamma-BHC for many years to kill the locusts. That's also a very persistent compound, and even the minutest quantity of a pesticide like this will have an effect on some form of life somewhere in the ecosystem.
We were forced by law to spray locusts here so they didn't eat the millies in the Free State. And so we did. We sprayed extensively.
Organic Karoo lamb doesn't exist. Natural lamb, which you produce with the least amount of chemicals, definitely exists. But total organic lamb, I don't believe that.
In order to become organically certified, one of the requirements is that you have to have your soil tested. And they take random samples across the farm. Of the 8 samples that were sent away, not one came back with any pesticide residue, neither DDT, nor arsenic, nor gamma-BHC.
I remember years ago, a colleague of mine sampled meat from all over the country, basically every quarter-degree square, and tested that for organochlorine residues. And they found it basically in every single part of the country. There was either DDT residues or the metabolites, or dildron, or lindane, or whatever.
We took 4 lamb samples to the SABS to test for pesticide residues using a broad-spectrum multi-residue test. No POP residues were detected, although it's highly probable they were present in minute amounts. But what about the so-called harmless chemicals used daily in agriculture? We took 20 samples of fruit and vegetables to the SABS. None of the organic samples had chemical residues. We did, however, find endosulfan on lettuce and cucumber samples. Endosulfan is an organochloride like DDT and is not registered for use on either of these vegetables.
One of the most powerful effects that it has on us as humans is it affects our central nervous system in a negative way. It interferes with the way the central nervous system functions. So, you have absolutely no way of knowing what it's going to do to you.
Of our 3 spinach samples, again only the organic was clean. Sample 2 had residues of an insecticide called lambda-cyhalothrin. Sample 1 had 2 residues, an organophosphorus and a pyrethroid pesticide. Once again, none of these chemicals are registered for use on spinach.
So here you've got somebody eating a salad. You think that's really, really healthy, okay? And you're trying to encourage your children to eat these fruit and vegetables, and yet there are pesticide residues on the food that can affect the central nervous system and cause excitability. Now what we have today is a serious problem in westernized countries where we are exposed to these pesticides of attention deficit disorder and hyperactivity disorder.
After the break, an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Things like pesticide residues are often just stored in the body. You can wrap it in fat, put it into storage, and when it builds up to a certain level, you may get cancer. But when you're having children, you can find, and their fat reserves are not what ours are as adults. Their bodies are a lot smaller, and their bodies are a lot more susceptible. They're in such a growth phase. Their bodies are still growing, their brain is still developing, and so you're interfering with the growth process. Who knows what monsters we're breeding? Maybe they're going to be born with 5 eyes and 3 arms,
Pesticides are big business. Each year, the world uses an estimated 2.6 million metric tons of pesticides, worth $38,000 million. We're told these chemicals are necessary to keep production up and to ensure food safety. We are also told that by the time we eat produce, the pesticide residues are so small they have no effect on our health or the environment. They say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. The Elgin district in the Western Cape produces 60% of our apples. The European Union absorbs 75% of the 2.5 million pallets of apples exported each year. If they want access to lucrative export markets, producers have to meet strict regulations to protect the environment, consumers and workers from agrochemicals. This farm, Monteith Trust, is certified by EuropeGap, an internationally recognized standard brought in by the British supermarkets.
Yes, chemicals will contribute to a more profitable production that we have without compromising environment or human safety.
Cape Span accounts for half of all fruit exports from South Africa. Kobus Hartman is their environmental manager.
And it's unfortunate that we have to use a wide variety of chemicals in order to maintain good quality and in order to ensure that the product, the volume and also the quality of the product is being maintained.
In 6 months, this orchard will see a number of fungicides, 4 insecticides, at least 2 herbicides, various foliar feeds and other chemicals.
Not all orchards, not all farms, not all businesses, farming enterprises can really go organic and then in the end of the day make a lot of money out of that.
Just a few farms away is one of only 2 organic apple farms in South Africa. Until 3 years ago, Michael Prevost used as many chemicals as his neighbours.
The mindset of the convinced farmer, as I was, is really being on the end of a cell phone when you have a problem to your local spray rep, and he'll just tell you what to use. We almost created a silent spring here, like Rachel Carson describes in her book. We heard no more frogs, and it is said that when you don't hear any frogs, then you've destroyed your water source or the quality of your water source. But I wish more of my fellow farmers here in Elgin could walk the same path as I am. There are many of them that do come here because they realize that they've raped the earth and they've got to put something back.
In organic farming, they treat the soil differently. They will use natural methods to loosen up the soil and to put the organic material back there and encourage the soil organisms to take the organic material down and aerate the soil. Traditionally in farming, you replace 5 or 6 minerals in the soil. But we need 84 minerals. Now in organic farming, they make sure that all the minerals are in the soil at the same ratio in which they occur in the rock, for example.
The better quality my soil is, the better quality vegetables I produce, and the vegetables are almost a byproduct of me farming with the soil and with nature and with microbes.
Wainsleydale is a small but intensive farm near Lanseria in Gauteng. They supply organic vegetables to supermarkets and to individuals through a box scheme.
In an organic system, it's what you're not getting. You're not getting all the chemicals that they use, the fertilizers and the insecticides and the herbicides that they use post-harvest to protect and prolong that shelf life. We know that there's a buildup of those chemicals in the human body. More often than not, those chemical residues are calculated to an average human weighing 60 kilograms. We don't know what the effect of those chemicals are on someone far lighter. We farmed organically by default for thousands and thousands of years. It's only in the last 70 odd years that we've been using petrochemical fertilizers and chemicals.
I started off like most South Africans, thinking, this is just a new fad, and it'll go away, and it's not that important. Actually, it is important. I've come to realize that the way in which they do things actually makes sense. It's very logical, but it's a whole new dimension. It's a whole new paradigm bubble.
Organic farming is labor-intensive, and without chemicals, plants take longer to grow and harvests are smaller. Farmers have to get to know their predators and find non-chemical ways to combat them. For instance, they plant edible flowers among their crops and encourage helpful insects on their farms. Meerist is an organic farm near Franschhoek in the Western Cape. They produce mushrooms and herbs in a labor-intensive process. There are chemicals and sprays that organic farmers are allowed to use. They're often more expensive than the synthetics, like this neem oil, sprayed on the thyme crop as a natural insecticide.
People say you are what you eat, and as far as South Africa is concerned, it is, from my perspective, there seems to be a lack of protection mechanisms for the consumer when it comes to conventional products. And that is one of the major benefits of organics, is that the consumer knows that there is a certification system and there are checks and balances.
Only 15% of the produce grown on this farm is sold as organic. The rest goes onto the conventional shelves. It seems South African consumers are not ready for organics.
If you go to a normal supermarket and the stuff I see on the shelf nowadays, which is called organic, you can hardly eat the stuff. It's expensive, first of all. Secondly, it is so bitten and eaten by the gogos that no consumer would buy the stuff.
There's also this perception that organic means you've got to be this weird nutter with wild hair and you wear a kaftan and you don't shave your legs.
Woolworths introduced organic food 2 years ago, but today organics account for less than 1% of the total food sales.
Organics is a bridge you've got to cross, and you've got to burn it behind you.
Roland Kroon and 26 other farmers from Graafrenet were burned when their exclusive contract to supply Woolworths with organic lamb was terminated.
And let's face it, the consumer in South Africa doesn't know what organic meat is, because in Europe you have to have the logo of the organic certifying authority has to be on the meat. In this country there's no such legislation, so anybody can call themselves organic. And so, as I said, I suspect that what they've done is they've introduced organics for a year, for a short period of time, to get the consumer to think that everything that is in Woolworths is organic.
Certainly that was not the case. I mean, as I said to you, we started about 7 years ago with the organic program. Certainly, committing ourselves to a long-term program of getting organics in place. The lamb products weren't selling particularly well, and our feeling around that was, even though we supported it for 2 years, is that the customer is not really ready for the organic lamb products.
Us little guys who potted around on the land here, we have absolutely no hope of taking our product to the market competitively, because the supermarket chains they've cut their cost of processing down, and they've got such a fine art, and the volumes are so big that those of us who tried individual marketing, and we've tried it, we've done, I don't know how many farmers have tried to do it, you just get shut out so quickly. So those are the realities. We just don't have the clout to do it.
Because at the end of the day, what is it all about? It's about money. It's about more produce, more profit, and more money in the bank.
In order to feed the hungry mouths of the world right now at an affordable rate, in other words, in large quantities of food, we have to combat the pests and the plagues of the world. And the only way to do it right now, if we want to do it rapidly and cost effectively is to use chemical control of the pests. And again, I see nothing wrong with that.
But one also questions how much of that produce actually reaches the people who are in dire need or in short supply of food.
Unfortunately, when you return to ways which are very conducive to health, then the price goes up, and that is an economic problem in our country.
It's high time that the man on the street, and specifically the people in the cities, recognize that what is happening on the land is actually directly impacting on their future. And it's not about no chemicals or taking domestic animals off the land. It's about integrating our management so that we can economically survive, ecologically survive, and socially survive.